Let me ask you something. Are you absolutely certain you know where to find roach in the dead of winter? I mean, really certain. Because for years, we've been told the same thing. Find the deepest hole in the lake and you'll find the fish hugging the bottom. But what if I told you that's the very reason you're not getting bites? In this video, we're not just going to challenge that old belief. We're going to expose why it's often flat out wrong. I promise, by the end of this, you'll look at your fish finder and your entire approach to winter roach in a completely new way. So let me ask again, do you really think fish in freezing water want to sit in the darkest, deepest, most lifeless part of the lake? Let's find out. This whole idea of fish going deep in winter is drilled into us from our very first fishing trips. It makes sense on the surface, right? The water is warmer at the bottom, it's stable, and the fish are lethargic, so they just want to sit still. This becomes gospel. You see it on every forum, in every old fishing magazine. Anglers get on the ice, pull out their augers, and head straight for that 30-foot hole in the middle of the lake. They spend all day staring at a tip-up or a float, convinced they're in the right spot. And when they don't get a bite, they blame the weather, the pressure, or just bad luck. It's a habit, a tradition passed down. But traditions don't always put fish on the ice. So let's begin with the biggest rule we're all taught. When the ice is thick and the snow is deep, roach school up and drop into the deepest parts of the lake. They sit right on the mud, barely moving, and you have to put the bait directly on their nose. Picture it. You're out there, it's 5 degrees below zero, and you've spent an hour drilling holes over the lake's basin. You drop your line, feel that distinct thump as the sinker hits the bottom, and you wait. You are confident. You are doing exactly what the experts have always told you to do. The problem is, the fish didn't read the same books we did, and they are often nowhere near the bottom. Let me paint a picture of a typical frustrating day. You're set up in that deep spot. An hour goes by, nothing. You see another guy maybe 100 yards away, over what you know is a shallower flat, and he's pulling up fish. You think, yeah, he's just lucky, it's a fluke. You rebait your hook, maybe change your jig. Another hour passes, still nothing. The silence is deafening. You start to doubt everything, your bait, your gear, your spot. This exact scenario plays out on thousands of frozen lakes every single weekend. It's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. The problem isn't your luck, it's your location in the water column. Now back to that guy catching fish in the wrong spot. What does he know that you don't? Let's say you walk over and chat. He tells you he's fishing in 15 feet of water, not 30. But here's the kicker. He says his bait is another 5 feet off the bottom. He's fishing suspended in the middle of the water column. To a traditionalist, this sounds like nonsense. Why would a fish be floating in the middle of nowhere in the dead of winter? It goes against everything we've been taught. But this isn't an accident. He's not lucky. He has tapped into a fundamental truth about winter fish behavior that most anglers completely ignore. Let's talk about why the deep bottom isn't the paradise we think it is. We assume it's a safe, stable environment. But in many lakes, especially those with a lot of weeds and muck, the opposite is true during the dead of winter. All that dead vegetation from the summer and fall settles on the bottom and starts to decay. This process of decomposition consumes a huge amount of dissolved oxygen. So that deep, dark hole can actually become an oxygen-depleted dead zone, which the fish can't breathe there. They have no choice but to move up to find water with enough oxygen to survive. Now for a little bit of simple science without the confusing charts. Think of the lake as having layers. We all know that water is most dense and therefore heaviest at about 39 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 degrees Celsius. In winter, this layer of warm water often sinks to the bottom, but if the bottom is losing oxygen due to decay, the fish have a problem. They need that warmer water for their metabolism, but they also need oxygen to breathe. They are forced to find a compromise. They have to move up off the bottom, away from the decaying muck, to a level where there's a perfect balance of breathable oxygen and tolerable temperature. This creates a comfort zone that is suspended in the water. This comfort zone is everything. Fish are not just mindless eating machines, they are survival machines. In the harsh conditions of winter, their primary goal is to expend as little energy as possible while staying in the most stable environment they can find. If that environment is 10 feet off the bottom in 20 feet of water, that is precisely where the entire school of roach will be. They won't be on the bottom, they won't be just under the ice, they will be stacked up in this invisible layer. When you drop your bait straight to the bottom, you are fishing under the entire school of fish. They may not even know you're there. So how do you find this magical, invisible layer? Your fish finder is the key, but you have to know how to read it. Most anglers drop their transducer in the hole, see the bottom displayed as a thick red line, and then drop their jig until they see it hit that line. They're only focused on the bottom 2 or 3 feet. The mistake is ignoring the other 90% of the water column. You need to start looking for faint lines or clouds of interference suspended in the middle of the screen. Those faint signals aren't static. They are often massive schools of baitfish or the very roach you're looking for, hanging out in their comfort zone. The electronics can be deceiving too. Your flasher is an amazing tool, but it only shows you what is directly under the transducer. It can show a hard bottom, but it won't scream at you, "Warning, no oxygen down here." You have to be the detective. If you mark fish suspended, trust the machine over the old rulebook. If you are not marking anything, it doesn't mean there are no fish. It just means you need to start actively searching the entire water column with your lure, not just the bottom. Treat every foot of water from the bottom up to the ice as a potential strike zone, because it is. Let's put this into practice. The next time you're out, I challenge you to try this experiment. Drill your hole in a spot with a reasonable depth, say 20 to 25 feet, but instead of letting your line out until it hits bottom, do the opposite. Start fishing just a few feet under the ice, jig there for a minute or two, then drop it down another 2 feet, wait, then another 2 feet. Systematically and slowly work your way down. It requires patience. It feels unnatural. Your brain will be screaming at you to just drop it to the bottom where the fish are supposed to be. You have to ignore that voice. This first adjustment, the conscious decision to not fish the bottom, is the hardest part. It's like a golfer changing their swing. It feels wrong and awkward at first. You're fighting years of muscle memory and ingrained fishing doctrine. You might spend 10, even 15 minutes slowly dropping your lure down, thinking this is a total waste of time. You'll be tempted to just free-spool it to the bottom. Don't. This patient, methodical search is the single most important thing you can do to find suspended winter roach. You are not just waiting for a fish to find your bait, you are actively hunting for the layer where the fish live. And then it happens. As your lure is sitting perfectly still about 12 feet down in 20 feet of water, you see it. It's not a big, aggressive tug. Winter roach bites are often incredibly subtle. The line might just go slack, or your spring bobber might lift up ever so slightly. That's the bite. They often swim upwards to take the bait. If you're not paying close attention, you will miss it completely. This is the moment of truth. You set the hook, and you feel that satisfying weight on the other end. The connection is made, not on the bottom, but in what you used to consider dead, empty water. Pulling that first roach up through the ice is the proof. It's the aha moment that changes everything. You look at the fish, then you look at your line, estimating how far off the bottom you were. 10 feet, 12 feet. It's undeniable. The fish were not on the bottom. They were right where the combination of oxygen and temperature was best for them. This single catch dismantles the old myth more effectively than any article or video could. It's real-world proof that your old strategy was flawed. Now, your job is to replicate it. Pay attention to that exact depth. So let's dig a little deeper into why they suspend. It's not just about oxygen and temperature. It's also about food. What do roach eat in the winter? They feed heavily on tiny aquatic organisms called zooplankton. And guess what? Zooplankton are also sensitive to their environment. They will move up and down in the water column to find the best light conditions for the algae they feed on and the best oxygen levels. So if the zooplankton are suspended 10 feet off the bottom, the roach will be suspended 10 feet off the bottom too. They are simply following their food source. Think about it this way. The entire food chain has shifted upwards. The microscopic life moves up, the zooplankton follow, and the roach follow them. The predators, like pike or big perch, will then follow the roach. It's a chain reaction. By fishing on the bottom, you are completely missing the entire party. The action is happening way above your head. You're sitting in the empty basement while the feast is happening on the main floor. Understanding this food chain connection is critical. The fish aren't just there, they are there for a reason, and that reason is usually food. Now that you've caught one fish at a specific suspended depth, a pattern begins to form. You drop your lure back down to that exact same depth. No need to let it hit bottom first. Just count the reel turns or watch your line to get back to that magic number. And sure enough, within minutes, that little bobber lifts again. You pull up another one and another. You have now located the school and confirmed the pattern. It's not a fluke anymore. It's a reliable, repeatable strategy. The other anglers around you, still glued to the bottom, are watching you pull fish after fish from what seems like thin air. This directly busts another common myth, that winter fish are lethargic and inactive. We're told they just sit on the bottom and conserve energy. While they are certainly slower than in the summer, they are far from inactive. They are actively positioning themselves. They will move vertically by dozens of feet in a single day to stay in that comfort zone and follow their food. They are not just sitting and waiting for food to fall on their heads. They are making strategic decisions to survive. Our job as anglers is not to assume they are lazy, but to figure out what strategic decision they have made on that particular day. So, here's your practical guide to finding the magic layer every time. Step 1. Use your electronics to find a promising area, like a drop-off or an underwater point, but don't just fixate on the deepest part. Step 2. Start fishing higher in the water column than you think you should. A good rule of thumb is to start about 1/3 of the way down from the ice. Step 3. Work your way down in 1 to 2 foot increments, pausing for at least a minute or two at each depth. Pay extremely close attention to your rod tip or float for those subtle up bites. The fish will tell you where they are. The biggest mistake we all make is impatience. Ice fishing, especially in the dead of winter, can be slow. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking more holes equals more fish. So we drill a hole, drop to the bottom, jig for 5 minutes, get nothing, and then move and repeat the process. In all that time, we never once thoroughly searched the water column in any of those holes. You could have been sitting on top of a massive school of fish the entire time, but your bait was 10 feet below them. Slow down, be methodical, fish one hole properly before you decide to move on. Ultimately, you need to start thinking like a fish, not like a fisherman who has read a bunch of old books. Forget the hard and fast rules. Every lake is different, every day is different. Water clarity, snow cover, oxygen levels, and food location change constantly. Your job is to be an observer and a problem solver. Use your electronics as clues, not as absolute truth. Use your lure as a probe to search the entire volume of water. The fishermen who consistently catch fish in the dead of winter are the ones who are willing to adapt and abandon a strategy that isn't working, no matter how long they've been using it. So here is my direct challenge to you. The very next time you go ice fishing for roach, make a promise to yourself. For the first hour of your trip, you are forbidden from letting your lure touch the bottom. I mean it. Start high and work your way down, foot by foot. Give every single layer of the water column a fair chance. It might feel like a waste of time at first, but I'm willing to bet that you will be surprised by what you find. You might just discover that the fish have been there all along, floating right over your head. Try it. So let's wrap this up. We've been told for generations that winter roach go deep and stay on the bottom, but today we've learned that's often a myth. The dead of winter often means a dead bottom with low oxygen, forcing the entire food chain to move up. The real hotspot is often a suspended layer in the middle of the water column where fish find the perfect balance of temperature, oxygen, and food. The most jarring what et a poverot moment for any angler is pulling fish after fish out of a spot 10 feet off the bottom, while everyone else around you is blanking. This one realization can fundamentally change your entire approach to ice fishing. It's not about luck, it's about understanding the environment and being willing to break the old rules. Thank you so much for watching. If this video gave you a new perspective, do me a favor and hit that like button. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next tips. And now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what is the single biggest unwritten rule in fishing that you've discovered is completely wrong?